Okay, hey guys. So we're going to talk about like mental health and gender, and like how like the disparities work, and like how it's different for each gender. And we're just going to go into like male and female, like so cisgenders only. Um, and then like if discussion like more discussion come up, like topics come up, we would be okay with like delaying from like what I have and like moving on to that as well. So the first thing we need to know is like what everybody like already knows. So like what are some gender differences that you see in mental health? And I'll get Vyas's opinion first.
So general opinion we had shared in our group chat regarding regarding research that occurs when it comes to mental health, and we had also discussed a little bit about how research studies and clinical trials focus on males, sometimes a lot more than females, and the symptoms might differ vastly, and that shows in the underreporting of females in the patient population. So that can happen with both physical illness as well as mental health. So yeah, I'd want to open with.
Okay, Ilakkiya, what are your thoughts?
Uh, Primarily the same, because that was the point that I brought up in the group, and I was doing some more reading and found that I guess, interestingly, there's a lot of research surrounding mental health regarding reproductive fitness in a way, like postpartum depression, which comes after childbirth, and there was another postpartum mental health illness, and those are well studied, but just general women's mental health is not very focused on, and those areas are, and so women are often more likely to experience some mental health diseases like depression, anxiety, but because of social norms, it is underdiagnosed, and gender norms of how much people are willing to share play into that as well.
It's actually interesting because I do have some stats like with reproduction and like postmortem and all that. Actually, not postmortem, but like post reproduction. Okay, Ms. Jayashree, what are your thoughts?
According to me, like, see, first of all, there are two things in this. One is mental health, and the other one is mental illness. So, wherein like you have to categorize into two things when you talk about the anxiety or disorders, depressions, then it comes under the mental illness. Okay, so the way the people as diagnosed on this would be based on two things. So the topic which you people would ride on that, based on that, my input would be on that. Okay, like according to me, there are two things. The illness and health are totally different. Okay, it is not the same. So I would like to hear more from you people so that I can add on to whichever it falls. Actually, that's what I feel.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like as of now, yeah, like we have like we sort of use like mental wellness and mental illness as like the two opposites, and mental health like more of like like an umbrella term for like anything related to like just like mental health. So that's why I use the umbrella term so that you can go into mental wellness or illness depending on like what you want to like go forward in. Okay, Sia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is also my first meeting, so I'm kind of trying to get a gauge on where we're going with this. So another thing that I've noticed with the points that people have brought up is, women being understudied is like a common phenomena across all medical practice. But conversely, I've also noticed that mental health regarding men is more stigmatized, although women might be more underdiagnosed. So I think we need to make the premise a little bit more clearer. Are we talking about a mental illness or, mental health as we kind of, as we talk about it for most neurotypical people? Because, like there's a difference between something that could be fixed clinically or helped clinically versus something that might need just like counseling. And then also, how are we talking about gender? Are we talking about disparities just in terms of, getting diagnosed, or more of like the social and perceived stigma around it? So, I'm wondering what direction we're going to take with this.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. I think I've got everyone's opinions. So so the next question is sort of, we will be sort of speaking so I have a lot of statistics. So I'll say what the statistics is, and then say ask the thoughts on that. And then everything that I've taken today is from World Health Organization. So it's pretty legit. At the same time, even the brightest of minds could be wrong. So say what else is in your thoughts. So anyways, before I go into stats, I have few more questions. So next question is sort of the gender stereotypes, the gender roles that we have. How does that affect mental health, mental illness, your mental wellness? Just a way, not just in terms of diagnosing illness, but even just in just having to say the small stuff things of just feeling good, or bigger things not being anxious and everything. So how does gender roles play a part? And I don't want to give examples because I'll be stealing stuff. Vyaas, why don't you start on this one?
Wait, so the question was how the kind of statements that people use differs between genders. Is that what you're talking about, Akshay?
No. How do gender? Listen, I'm keeping it pretty wide, but how do gender roles? The things that are expected of women and things that are expected of a man, or those kind of things, where the moment someone knows that you're a man, then what are certain things that they kind of expect you to do, and what are certain things they expect you as a woman, that kind of thing. But I'm keeping it pretty broad because you can go specific, because that's there's 4 people answering this question. So so yeah.
All right. I mean, I feel there's this maybe sort of this idea that crying is sometimes takes attention when guys do it. So for instance, I'd like to bring up an example. I follow cricket a lot, and when Mohammad Siraj teared up during that 3rd test, I believe, of India-Australia game, that got a lot of attention. I don't know, maybe he did cry, and it was a difficult tour for everyone. But the emphasis on males crying, that I think needs to be. I don't know. That's again a part of the gender how do you put it? Expectations of that are put in place by the society, and it may be a lot more. It may be a lot more restricted in India compared to say crying in the US or Europe for males, or expressing their emotions differently, not just crying. It could be something else, and expressing their sadness or their feelings could happen differently, and the limitation put in place in India or in South Asian countries, or even in Eastern countries, is I think a lot more than in the West. Yeah, I don't know. Those are just my general opinions.
Okay, sounds good. Just to provide some context, he's talking about the India versus Australia test series that happened recently, where in the 3rd test, the bowler mentioned, Siraj, he played his first test match for India, and he had lost his father very recently, and then he had come and play his first test match, and when the national anthem was going on, it felt very real to him. So he started crying on the spot, and that's one Vyaas is mentioning right now. Okay, next, Sia, what are your thoughts?
Well, in general, I feel like our society is, from what I perceive of it, especially on social media, It's getting better now, but it tends to be very emotion phobic. And the show of some emotions is seen to be more acceptable for people who identify as men. So, anger or, punching walls or something, even though it is still an emotional reaction, some emotional reactions are perceived to be more acceptable for men and some for women. So if, people who identify as women and fit the social role of that, if they are the ones punching walls, that's always a little bit out of the ordinary, but you could expect them to be crying instead, and more people would expect that. So that's interesting to me. And also I've noticed a new rhetoric about mental health surrounding what it even means to be a man or a woman. And there's an increasing number of people who don't conform to either social roles, and so don't have a lot of guidance in terms of, okay, so if I were born and raised as identifying as a man, then I know that some things are more acceptable for me to do and some things aren't. And some people just don't identify with the gender identity of being a man. So I feel like there's a lot of people talking about that whose views might not be represented in this discussion, who are increasingly finding that emotion needs to be a more universally accepted thing. And just because you identify with a certain gender doesn't mean that one should be taboo for you, if that makes sense.
Definitely. The millennials are not just millennials, but it started off with the millennials where we're challenging all labels to because for some reason and I'm not saying whether it's right or not, but for some reason, certain reasons millennials hate labels, so they sort of go to see because labels means it has standard responsibilities and standard pros and cons and all everything, whereas they want it to be everything to be individually centered to them, and by labeling them you're kind of putting them in a group. So we are challenging everything, and so it was very interesting getting that. This is the first time I'm listening to like a female person being angry with why can't they show their anger and punching the wall. That was something I never thought about. So that's very, 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 very interesting. Ms. Jayashree?
Actually, I like the way Shreya pointed out. Actually, I'm with her. Okay, so first of all, now the way you people are bringing out things is about the emotions. Okay, which we get. Okay, so wherein it is based on according to me, it is based on the patterns of thoughts or the traits that you have when you are brought up, or whoever is in that case. Okay, for example, if you just look at the emotions, basically if you see a mental illness significantly affects how a person feels or think or behaves and interacts with other people. Okay, so when Vyaas was giving some emotional feel of remembering his father, or in the however it has been placed. Okay, but it has the emotions have gone to the mind of every individual who watched that, is it not? So basically sometimes it is in the form of, okay, it is acceptable. When it is one to one, then there the debate starts. Okay, so we cannot conclude whether it is right or not in anybody's emotional whether they express or whether it is an interaction, whatever it is. We cannot comment, or we cannot take it as right or wrong. So each one is different, and when it comes to the expressions and the emotions, yes, it is not the same what everybody perceive. It is totally different for each one of us, actually. So in that way, if you see it is based on how actually in this mental health, right, you have different things, how you there are different ways of expressing, whether it is a gratitude or stress. Okay, or your mindfulness or cognitive diffusions, or whatever it is. It's based on that you start expressing, or you start controlling, or however it is. Okay, So still, when it talks about the women, okay, when you talk about women and men, it's again how you are being brought up, or how you are being taught, or how the qualities that the women or men has got. Okay, right from the beginning, if you say this, when you look at when the boys are being brought up, they say boys should not cry, or the boys are stronger. Okay, stronger than. So these are the small words which gets into the mind of the people, and they actually their feelings are being controlled, which is not right. Okay, so if the emotions are equal to both, okay, here there is no gender, whether it is boys or girls or whatever it is. Only thing is you are trying to give a mask saying that no, you don't do it because you're a boy, or you are a man, or you are a woman, you have the rights to do it. Okay, or you have when you do it, it is not, you are exception, something like there is no the emotions are, according to me, the emotions are always equal to everybody. Okay, there is no right or wrong, or there is no limit, and it has to be expressed because we are all human beings. Okay, first we have to take that, then comes the boy, girl, man, woman, or whether you have the traits, or whether you have the personality, whether you are having a good food habits, whether you have a good sleep. All those things comes next. Okay, everybody has right. Let the gender difference feel that even when you initially started about the diagnosis or more for men, because why women have not taken is they are showing us like they are weak. Okay, it's been like whatever they do it, the emotional part already they are weak, that's what. But emotionally they are more stronger than men actually. Okay, if you the way they handle their life, right? When you look at them, they are totally different. And but when it comes to the medically or technology or whatever you bring it, but yes, the diagnosis or the statistics talks more about men who have been who have like the statistics talks about it. I don't know why the women are not much included, but still I feel the when you go see, if you look at some people in women in the villages, okay, you can take those right from the way the way they handle things, the way they work, their mental stability. Okay, everything because the social media, the comfort zone which the people who are in the city, they are totally different. Okay, but when you look at the people who are in the lower part of the in way of health, or in way of their social status, but still they play a beautiful role, and they don't wait for the benefits to be gained. Okay, so in this, that's what, if you talk about it, it goes into various directions. But my statement would be, there is no gender difference in case of, like, you need to give accept the emotions both for men and women, and there is no comparison. It is according to the each individual situation. Okay, so we have to respect whatever it may be. This is what I feel.
Very interesting. Starting off with like something that seems like an obvious statement, which is like, don't discriminate emotions depending on the gender. So that's like a pretty big thing. And the second thing that you brought it up was sort of you're trying to reason with like why like diagnosing females is like not up there, like right up with like males. And that's actually a question I want to bring up to the floor as well. But like before that, I want to ask Ilakkiya's thoughts on this question, and then we'll move to that question. Ilakkiya, just answer like your thoughts on like how gender roles affect like mental health, and then like your answer for the next question, which is like why do you think like females are not oh boy okay females are not diagnosed in this to the same level of like males.
So as for us, how do gender roles we have affect mental health? Sia brought up an important point, which is, I think we should still try and speak about transgender mental health in this conversation. Even if all of us here are cisgendered, it's important to speak about it in terms of awareness. Although this is just an opinion-driven conversation, it might still be useful. And I would say that the gender role we have in terms of mental health, women might feel more microaggressions regarding their gender in day-to-day situations, which can make them more prone to, I guess, more emotional feelings regarding that, upset and angry, things like that. I know I've experienced it. That's like a mental, like that's temporary mental health state. It's not a mental health illness or general wellness. I would say that in that, I guess like Jayashree brought up a really good point that maybe emotionally women have better ways of coping with it because it is less stigmatized so far. It is seen as normal for women to be more emotionally expressive and reach out to people and get more help. And that might help with mental wellness because women can have a stronger support group in that regard. And with destigmatization of men seeking help and men speaking about emotions, since they are equally valid and should not be policed, that can change. And in terms of diagnosis, I guess I'm just thinking about that TikTok that you shared, Akshay, where women with autism are less likely to be diagnosed than men with autism because more men were studied in regards to autism, and men behaviors were like looked at to identify these are the behaviors to look for. But since women subjects were not studied as much, it was harder to diagnose them at a younger age, and also because of social norms in terms of, you know, not spreading your issues to other people or keeping your things to yourself, which I think affects both genders in a way. Like that's that feeling of self-sufficiency. That's just a universal problem of trying to be more independent when you could rely on other people. I think that understudying women symptoms leads to less women diagnosis in terms of mental illness, and predetermined prejudices and judgments and biases in mental health care providers or physical health providers can lead to different diagnoses as well, because they will make an assumption based on your gender of what's okay and what's not for you to be experiencing and decide if it's a level that's appropriate of like, oh, you know, this doesn't warrant my attention, like one way or the other. An example I'm thinking of is that if a woman goes to a physical health center and she speaks about maybe physical abuse or problems like that, depending on whether your provider is male or female, the male might completely disregard it. This is something I heard from a friend. So like in terms of that, paying attention to what care is needed, biases can play a role of like, oh, that's normal, it's expected, you're a wife, compared to that's not okay. So it's not just gender roles in that case, it's also society roles in mental health. And then transgender people, like Sia mentioned, like there's just not enough support there. They're already going through a lot of stress internally trying to figure out what their gender identity is and how it doesn't align with their birth sex. So there's a lot of stress from that, and generally stressful situations can lead to poor mental health. And with increased awareness about transgender mental health and transgender awareness, period, accepting that it's normal, not criticizing people and thinking it's evil, that will help in terms of bringing more awareness to it as well. That was a long answer, sorry.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. It was like it is actually like true. I don't have the research with me, but like like women are like sort of like understudied because like I was trying to look for a few things, and I did like find that especially like with like autism and things, like so there were like a few things that were given. I don't have the stat with me, but there was also like one of the reasons which I'll like talk about like later. One thing that I did find like interesting was sort of like how the hospital experience with like like the implicit bias of like the implicit bias is a bias that you hold innately because of the culture that you grew up in. It's not something that you believe in. It's something you might consciously like like have a, like the other opinion, but then like subconsciously like you might do things differently. And like there are doctors who have said that like you have to like work on it. So anyway, so the implicit bias over here is that like with females, again, like with abuse, sometimes it's disregarded, and that is again like news to me. But like that would definitely be like a terrible thing. So like if that is like true, then like doctors have to like work on like like taking that implicit bias off. And there are studies that show that like there are certain things that can be done with like dealing with implicit bias. So I hope like things happen there. Vyas, what are your thoughts on this question?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Oh, the question is like women are underdiagnosed, or rather, like diagnosed like pretty late, and like depending on those things. So, like, what are your thoughts as to like why that's happening? Like, why are like they not like right up there?
I mean, like, yeah, it's very hard to talk about a question like this unless we're talking about something specific. Because in the case of autism, I mean, the symptoms show differently, and the video that you had shared in the TikTok video, the lady shared that she did mask consciously, right? She was masking her anxiety, her nervousness, and she mentions how during conversations she tries to stay alert by doing little things, by tapping on something or something like that. So that's just one case of autism, and that might differ from one situation to another. So I mean, and it's really hard to tell how to bridge that gap. And but I'd like to take the point of the doctors, uh, not being attentive to problems faced by women. Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of movies, both in Hollywood, Bollywood, and a lot of other languages, where they discuss, and that's true. They are based on true stories. It's not just fiction when a policeman discredits a women's alibi or a woman's experience entirely. That does happen. I haven't seen it firsthand, but it's a real problem that needs to be discussed more often. So maybe encouraging conversations like these can help people to come out in their own families at first, and that can probably break stigmas before that grows into a society-wide conversation. So those conversations that happen one-on-one within families is more important, in my opinion, and that can change a lot of things compared to, say, activism and a lot of other things. So that has its place, but having those one-on-one conversations is the stepping stone to bigger things. Yeah.
For sure, like having one-on-one conversation with like your close ones, like like people are like more okay to like listen to what you're saying, and like listening is like the most important part like in this conversation, because like we all have our opinions, and like so we need someone to like talk to us who we would listen to, and those one-on-one conversation would definitely help. Okay, so now I'm gonna like say like two statistics, and I want to just like get thoughts. So some studies have found that doctors are more likely to diagnose depression in women compared with men, even when they have similar scores on standardized measures of depression or present with identical symptoms. So that's the first study. And the second study is that depression is twice as more common in females than males. So one thing today, this is like not a cause and effect thing. So, like this could just be like two separate things where like, this could like slightly up it, but then this is like twofold. So it's like half and full. So it's a pretty big thing. So so like that. So my question is like what are like your thoughts to that? And like I'll get Ilakkiya's opinion on this.
So thoughts regarding the fact that women are twice as likely to have depression and the fact that women are diagnosed more often than males with depression? Or less often?
Yes, yes. Some studies have found that doctors are more likely to diagnose depression in women compared with men, even when they have similar scores on standardized measures of depression or present with identical symptoms.
Okay. Well, that's actually interesting because I don't see why the difference in perception should be there, given that if I was gonna say something along the lines of maybe depending on how much like emotion they're showing, it's easier to diagnose in one or the other. But if they're showing the same symptoms, why are women more likely to be diagnosed? It could be the stigma against men of like, oh, you're just upset right now, you aren't diagnosed with a mental health disorder, in terms of men diagnosing men or women diagnosing men because of societal biases of what's okay in a way. Like if men are supposed to be seen as infallible, then this would be something that breaks that image because mental health is seen as a bad, or mental health illness is seen as a terrible thing to be experiencing. I am not sure. That was just a guess. Okay.
It's a pretty good guess, like because I actually like looked at the internet, I couldn't find an answer. So like whatever we are like saying are like will be good conjectures and hypotheses. Jayashree ma'am, like what do you Ilakkiya, are you done or do you have?
I just wanted to add one more thing of the reason women might be more likely to be diagnosed with depression. Honestly, kind of wanted to mention this for the previous question as well, of women's experiences that can lead to depression are different. I read somewhere that I'm aware myself that there are more sex-based violence events towards women, and that alone can lead to more mental health illness in women. So those kind of experiences, if they're more prevalent in the female community, it makes sense that mental health illnesses like depression are also more common in the female community. Not saying that that's the only cause for depression, but definitely plays a role into it. Because the statistics for rape and other sexual or sex-based violence is very high.
For sure, and like thanks for bringing that, because like so one important thing I like the fact is like she didn't use like my stat as like the cause for like just like an umbrella thing for everything. You like brought up your own like reasons, which are like true reasons as well, and like violence, like relationship violence, domestic violence, and like many forms of like abuse, like both physical and emotional, like do play an effect, like with depression. And like one other thing I would assume it is, I don't know, was in the traditional roles, you tend to like not be able to interact much with like females would not be able to interact much with like many people. So that sort of affects with like humans need more humans to live with, and like if it's a joint family, then like pretty great. But like in like a nuclear family, which is what is becoming more prevalent now, I would assume that like if the traditional roles are still exist in a nuclear family, that would also affect them, because you don't get to like the females wouldn't get to interact much, and like so when you don't interact much, you don't show your emotions much, and like basically like by having those roles, like you're sort of like minimizing like their feelings and emotions, not because you're saying, hey, like don't do this, don't do that, but like just innately like doing it by like giving them the roles, and like or them taking those roles. But anyway, like for this question, like for these two stats, like what are your thoughts, ma'am? Jayashree, ma'am?
Uh, First of all, in this gender differences in mental health disorder, so we are talking about the depression and domestic violence or physical abuse, right? So the categories that we talk about, it is both the participation of both men and women. Yes, the more affected is women, of course. Okay, so I would love to see maybe I as a it might be sounding like as because I'm a mother I'm talking like this. Actually, the way it is affected, whether it is, see, the mainly we are talking about the physical abuse for women or domestic violence, or depression for women. Why is, like, again, it is part and parcel of, it is the men who are also included in that. Okay, so talking about the well-being of women or why it is being carried in that way is all is 50% is only because of either it should be the family or the society, however it is been given the whether it is the way the protection or the way they have been carried.
I'll bring in two more statistics. This will be on schizophrenia. So when schizophrenia coexists with homelessness, women experience higher rates of sexual and physical victimization. That's the first statistic. And the second statistic is females with schizophrenia have higher quality social relationships than men. Those are two statistics on schizophrenia, where one of them talks about higher rates of sexual and physical victimization, and the other one is about like just in your social life, like the quality of your social life. And so like what are your thoughts on this? And like for this one, I just remember, like, why don't you start on this one? I can like put the statistics like on the chat as well at the same time.
Actually, schizophrenia is the most chronic and it's a disabling of mental disorders. Okay, with psychotic symptoms. Okay, so the like it has to be first. It has no the it has be the way it has to be identified is totally is first initially it is based on the information. Okay, because it cannot be everything which you talk to the individual, from there you bring out with what sort of disorder it has been. Okay, so it cannot so it has a in a systematic or a sympathetic way, basically. Okay, so we need to see how this the actually can I get back to you because I have just 2 minutes.
Sure.
Okay, I'll get back to you.
I'll ask the
Yeah,
others' opinions,
please.
and then
Yeah,
I'll
please.
get back to you.
Yeah.
Ilakkiya, what are your thoughts on this one?
I honestly don't remember what it means to be schizophrenic off the top of my head. So any chance you can give me a quick blurb on that if you know, or else I'm going to take a minute to Google it.
Okay, I think I can jump in. So I mean, so schizophrenia is you can think of it as I mean there are varying degrees, but one example that that might strike a chord is, imagine you walk into a room full of let's say you're giving a TED talk to 100 people, and there's a clown who's sitting in the middle of the room, right? And you know that he's not there. You just can't somehow bring the TED talk on schizophrenia to a group there. So this actually, but then again, there's varying degrees of this, but that's one example. Okay, I don't know.
Okay. It says my internet connection is unstable, so let's see how that goes. And thank you, Vyaas, for that example. That helps. I also did some mild Googling in the background, and I'm more familiar with it now. Okay, why do women experience more of emotional and physical victimization? Because women, even psychonormally, experience more of an emotional and physical victimization. Hot take. Because just things that, okay, for example, I forget which match this was, but Serena Williams was playing, and I think the referee made a bad call, and she was angry at the referee for that. I think she threw her racket down, or she yelled at the referee, and she was penalized for it. But what men who play tennis matches have reacted much worse, much more violently, much more aggressively towards the referee, and they were not pointed out as much, right? The same behavior is perceived as being worse and more emotionally unstable or aggressive, excessive in women, when the same thing in men is not seen that way. And so it makes sense that these different hallucinations and visualizations and disconnect with the reality that you might experience in schizophrenia, women are seen to be worse off for it. And I get combined with poverty, there's already stigma with that. So it's just an intersection of stigmatization against women and people who are poor. And it's like you already have some misconceptions about why they're in poverty at the moment. You already might have disdain towards them. And that combined with behaviors that imply the person's not mentally sound, because they're going through a mental illness that may or may not be diagnosed, then makes sense that that's the case. So in the end, it's really societal perception that influences the way that people see mental health symptoms in men and women. And women with schizophrenia have a higher quality of life than men. I think I read the same HW or WHO document as you did, but they mentioned that that was just the case in Canada. Cuban men with schizophrenia had a higher quality of life than Cuban women. So not sure what to say to the second one.
Okay, I might have like missed that. Like where the Canada part, not what Ilakkiya said. And like your thoughts on like victimization, like it does like make sense. Like there is like a lot of like policing that's like sort of done like with like just like normal like way of life, like a lot more with females, and that is not coming from statistics. I just like there's more of an anecdotal thing, like just from my conversations with like more like females have complained about it more to me than like males. Um, but yeah, like very very interesting. Vyas, what are your thoughts on this?
Wait, so so we moved on to another question. Akshay.
We're talking about the schizophrenia, like the two things, which is when schizophrenia it coexists with homelessness, then women experience higher rates of sexual and physical victimization. And like that's the statistics. You can talk about just like general sexual and physical victimization, or you can like talk about like homelessness, talk about that. So like so what are your thoughts on like that statistic? So the second statistic is like females with schizophrenia have a higher quality social relationship than men, but then we found out that this is like happening only in Canada.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, the second thing. The second thing, I don't have anything to add because I need to read more. But the first point about combining anything with homelessness is combining anything with homelessness is definitely detrimental to their quality, to their life in general. So they're trying to get out of the difficult situation they're in, and you put anything on top of it, and it's definitely a very big mess. It's hard to get out of. And when it comes to physical and domestic victimization, they one in the statistics from the US, and it's probably rings true across the world. So 1 in 3 women experience some form of physical or sexual violence during their lifetime. So, and that's a pretty alarming statistic. And when it comes to men, it's about 1 in 71. So, and that number again could change from country to country, but the overall situation is pretty dim unless we do something about it. And laws help in some sense, but the mindset of a society, or the mindset of the conversations that a generation has, cannot change overnight. So that takes time to happen. And I'd like to share a personal experience which I had a couple of years ago at Purdue. So when I was a senior at Purdue, I had this I was walking up Chauncey Hill, which is a popular area where there's a lot of restaurants, and I saw a woman being punched by a largely well-built man. So I've also written about this on my blog, because this was an experience that changed the way I look at America, because I've only read about sexual violence in newspapers, or physical assault, sorry, in newspapers, and seeing that happen in front of me was was kind of shocking at first. But then, so my initial reaction was to run away from it, and I go into the details in my article, which we can probably reference. So my initial reaction was to run away from it and not be just think it was a bad nightmare. And but I did step up, and more alarming thing to me was, more than the physical assault that was happening, so this guy was landing punches like a boxer on this woman, on the face and the chest. But the more alarming thing was, there were 10 students, college students just like me, who were just walking past the whole thing. So it was just like a normal everyday thing that they see. That's what it seemed like. And they didn't bat an eye. And I started shouting, and then fortunately there was another lady who started shouting. So we were able to generate enough commotion around the two people. And the hitting stopped. And so I had to, after this stopped, I had to make, there was no one making the call to 911 and reporting this. So, and everyone was asking, okay, somebody make the 911 call. So, but no one was ready to make the 911 call. So the question was, who's making the 911 call? Like it was mentioned, so there's got to be an action item. So my action item was to make that call. And so that happened. And then I was able to give them descriptions. By this time, the whole thing had subsided, and the man had left the area. And so I gave the description. The person, 911 operator, thanked me for the call. And then 3 months later, I got a call from them saying, there were two people who made that 911 call. I got a call from the police 3 months later saying there were two people who made the 911 call, but your description of that person helped us in catching the perpetrator. So that was kind of very, I wouldn't say proud, but it was a moment where I actually thought, okay, this actually helped. So I didn't think it was going to help. I didn't think I could make a difference by reporting that, but it eventually happened. So I mean, the reason I was able to do that was because I kind of ran through those situations in my head. So I like to think about ethical and moral dilemmas. And so in a sort of hypothetical sense, I used to do that when maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I was in high school. So being in that situation maybe allowed me to put that into action, but it's very hard to tell how people would react in those situations. So yeah, this is kind of unrelated to gender and mental health, I know, but the main point I want to drive is, yeah, the conversations help in building your confidence and your strength, that when you're under pressure, maybe these things can help, your mindset can help. So yeah, that's my closing statement.
There's research on menopause that has revealed that emotional well-being in middle-aged women is positively associated with their current general health status, psychosocial, and lifestyle variables, but not with their menopausal status nor their hormone levels. And like few studies have also been conducted that reveal that like men are like emotionally responsive to like many of the same same events as women. And like so like for that, like an example is that like after pregnancy, when, like like birth of the child, like like there is like a lot of documentation on like depression after childbirth for the mother, but that can happen to fathers as well. And that is like one of the new studies have come up in like only in the like last like 20-25 years. What are you guys' thoughts on like both the research? I'll go to Ilakkiya on this one first, and then Jayashree, if you're still there, like I'll get your thoughts, and then finally Vyaas.
I would like you to, I probably repeat the statistics. I got the first one, which is women's mental health is positively correlated with general mental health and not menopause. What was the rest of it?
Yes. So the second one is that like few studies have shown that like men are all, like sort of like not I don't want to say equally, but like emotionally responsible to like many of the same events. So like the events that affect like women, they also affect men, and like so like affect them emotionally. So like in that sense, like so for example, like after the birth, like there's I forgot the name for the depression, but like right after pregnancy, if there's a certain depression, and like it's like well documented with women, whereas like it also happening for men, and that was something like a new study that just like showed up in the last 20-25 years. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Okay. Well, I know it, like my answer for this is very biological. I study biology, and I think biology is the explanation for these statistics. It makes a lot of good sense that mental health is related to general mental health. If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not eating, if you're not sleeping enough, that will very easily contribute to mental health illness, or just like not feeling great. So that makes complete sense. Take care of yourself. Yeah, I would say it's important to recognize the relationship goes both ways. Your mental health will also affect your physical health and well-being. Depending on how you're thinking, you might choose to take care of yourself better or worse in your mental health in that regard. And menopause is a hormonally whack time, and your body is changing what it does, and those hormonal changes can have a huge impact on your well-being. And I know people who are going through menopause and experiencing depression. Like that makes sense. It's a hormonally demanding time. It wreaks havoc, and it goes on for, depending on the person, maybe up to a couple of years too. It's a slow burn. So it's like, think periods, but worse. I'm not trying to further add to the stereotyping of PMSing, or that like the stigma that women are crazy or worse or emotionally angry or upset around their period. Like all of those are explained by hormonal changes. Men don't experience the same level of hormonal cycles and swings every month. And menopause is like the loss of all of those hormones and starting of new ones. And it's just, that's the reason. It wreaks havoc on your body. No wonder it does affect your mental health. And hormones can transfer via skin. That's why cuddling, holding hands are all good ways to transfer hormones between couples. So if a couple is spending a lot of time together, men can, I've read studies where men can develop physical symptoms related to pregnancy, like putting on weight, developing more breast tissue, things like that. So the hormonal effects of postpartum depression, it makes sense that if you're still spending a lot of time with your partner, those effects can't transfer over as well, because hormones can transfer by skin. And also you're emotionally attuned to your partner.
Those are some like very, very good points. I don't want like say like a lot of my reflective statements. Like Vyaas, what are your thoughts?
Okay, first up, I was totally surprised by the fact that hormones can be transferred via people's skin. Is that true, Ilakkiya? How is that? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was something that I didn't know. So I was pretty surprised by it. I just thought that the physical touch or cuddling would release hormones in the man or the person you're cuddling with. So, but you're saying it transfers through the skin, like
There's
how?
both.
Physically?
Yeah, physically.
Oh,
Like, yes, you're right.
okay.
It'll induce like releasing the hormone within your body, but it can also transfer because hormones are based on lipids, and so that's fat. It's fat soluble. Our skin is made of the skin layers are made of lipids, so they can transfer.
Wow. Okay. Okay, that's fantastic. I had no idea. And so I'd like to go into this body mind thing. So when it comes to being in in a place where you don't want to be, where you have these negative thoughts or feelings, the one thing I noticed from my personal experience and the people I've talked to in college is it's easier to trick your body into doing something than tricking your brain into doing something. So an example of that would be, let's say you don't want to ruminate about your grades. So you're thinking about your grades all day, but you know that you have to exercise or you want to walk 20 minutes. So instead of thinking about or reading self-help books, into preparing your brain to do something, it's easier. It's just doing it would allow your brain to experience those hormones, where you have these feel-good hormones being released when you take a walk or when you do a hard workout. But reading or watching videos about getting better is not going to help you. So it's easier to trick your body is when I say you got to do something physical in terms of a physical activity, and that can help. You can't say for sure, but it's definitely better than sitting down and doing something. So yeah, that's what I mean by tricking your body. So yeah, that's my those are my thoughts on this. And the other two things, the other two questions that you had, I think that was well covered by Ilakkiya, because I don't know much about the biology, and she explained it pretty well. Yeah.
That's pretty good. Okay, so like I'll read two more statistics. We're not going to discuss about it. So just for this one, which is the two statistics, that the suicide rates are, and when I say suicide rates, it's like like successful suicide attempts are higher in men than in women, and then women have higher rates of PTSD than men, and it's actually like twofold. Like I saw the graph, and like it's actually pretty bad. So those are the two statistics I have that you guys can take, to the next discussion on whatever you guys are thinking, and then you can stop the recording after this.